welcome back, historians, to your U.S. history class online. Let's get started. Last week we talked about the beginning of Reconstruction. Reconstruction had three parts. Presidential Reconstruction. The president in charge of Reconstruction was Andrew Johnson, and he was impeached because he didn't really do Reconstruction. Part 2 was Congressional Reconstruction. Congress took over Reconstruction after they impeached Andrew Johnson and were able to pass the 13th and 14th Amendments. 13th Amendment, abolish slavery unless you are imprisoned. The 14th Amendment made any person born in the U.S. a U.S. citizen. So any slave that had been born in the U.S. could now apply to be a citizen. Congress also passed a series of civil rights acts to give and help newly freed people set themselves up and have a prosperous life. Today we're going to talk about Southern Reconstruction, the third part of Reconstruction, so let's get into it. Part of what Congress did whenever they took over Reconstruction was they banned any Confederate from being able to vote. So that was any person who was a military soldier or supporter of the Confederacy lost their voting rights. So now voting was opened up to freed black men, Southerners who had opposed the war, mostly poor farmers, and Northerners who had just moved to the South. After Andrew Johnson's impeachment, in the next election, Ulysses S. Grant, you've heard of him before as the military general for the Union forces, he was elected to be the president, and he was serving the Republican Party just like Abraham Lincoln. Grant would not have won this election if it had not been for the black voters in the South. So while he was president, he pushed to get the 15th Amendment passed. The 15th Amendment gave all men the right to vote. So that gave all men in the U.S. the right to vote, which opened it up for freed black men in the North to vote, as well as in the West. Now, Congress had also passed the Military Reconstruction Act. The Military Reconstruction Act allowed Congress to send the Army down south. Part of what the Army was doing down there was helping the states of the South, or the former Confederacy, rewrite their state constitutions. While state governments cannot limit any freedoms that you have from the Constitution, they can give you more rights. So, many of these new state constitutions included the right to free public education, as well as getting rid of slavery. The South had to elect delegates to go and oversee and represent the people as they wrote these new state constitutions. And 1/4 of the delegates from the South were black citizens. So that was monumental and gave black people a huge voice in restructuring the governments. Along with giving all men the right to vote and free access to public education, they also ended imprisonment for debt. After states rewrote their constitutions, then they had state elections. Many of the new state governments were Republican governments, so that meant that the majority party that was ruling the state was the Republican Party. About 1/5 of the new office holders or new elected people were black men. Hiram Rhodes Revels was the first black man elected to a federal position, so he was the first black senator in the U.S. Senate. Part of the reason that the Republican Party was able to gain this power over the state governments was because of the Congressional Military Act. The Army would be positioned at different polling places and make sure that it was safe for black people to vote. Because remember, racism was still alive and well within the South. And in fact, there were many former Confederates who were trying to return the Southern governments to the white man's rule. So as the states were ratifying the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, they were admitted back into the Union, and by 1870, 5 years after the Civil War, many of the southern states had been readmitted into the Union. Again, much of the Southern Reconstruction was able to happen because the Army was in place in the South to enforce the South to follow through with Reconstruction laws. All right, that's it for Southern Reconstruction. Go on to read some more primary sources and answer your questions. As always, be sure to reach out to office hours Monday through Friday between the hours of 12 and 1 p.m. Reach out to myself or Mr. Tyrell if you have any questions about any of the work. Good luck, historians. You got this.